That did how much to the champion? Hold on, run that back. $289,000. Let's see, there's 2 champs here. This should be interesting, right? Alright, that's one. Where's the other one? What's up, buddy? Oh, you're dead. Next. So, VEX MYTHOCLAST, as you saw, got a buff this season and an increase to damage. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the alternate firing mode of VEX MYTHOCLAST today and catering the build around it. For those of you that don't know what VEX MYTHOCLAST does or what the alternate firing mode is, it's called Temporal Unlimiter. Defeating targets builds stacks of overcharge. Once you have max stacks of overcharge, you hold down reload and then you swap to a firing mode which is full auto. And then in the full auto mode, if you hold the trigger down and charge up, you fire a more powerful linear fusion shot, which does, well, freaking silly damage to champions. An absurd amount of damage for a weapon in the energy slot, but more specifically to champions, it does 200% more damage and basically outright nukes any champion in one shot. Even in GM content, you can two-shot champions with this thing. So that's how the gun works and what the recent changes to it are. Now let's talk about build crafting and then how the gameplay loop is going to be while using VEX. Now for the build, I'm going to go over things that you should have on or at least consider having on, and I'm not going to go over every single little detail of the build, so this build is not going to be 20 minutes long. If you want to see the entirety of the build, I will have a dim link for this below in either the description or in the pinned comments, so you can look there if you'd like. But for now, we're going to go over the main things. First up, we're going to be on Solar Hunter, and we're going to be rocking the Golden Gun super specifically. You could run Blade Barrage if you'd like. Me personally, I like having the Marksman Golden Gun on because of the triple shot for precision hits. You do good damage, you make a bunch of orbs, and if you really feel like it and get spicy, you could put on Celestial Nighthawk, then do one big Nighthawk shot for massive damage, and then switch back to your other exotic, which we'll get to in a second here. But that's why I have Golden Gun on. For abilities, you're going to want to have Gambler's Dodge on, specifically to get your melee back, because this is going to be part of the build, where you throw your melee to get Radiant and also weaken enemies, and in the event that you may miss your melee, or you used it up and you need another one back quickly, you want to have Gambler's Dodge on to get another one back ASAP. For your melee knife, it doesn't really matter what you pick, but personally I like either Proximity Explosive Knife or just Knife Trick to land on targets very easily. For your grenade, we're going to rock Healing Grenade because we just want some survivability in this build in the event that you're solo and you just want to have some backup to not die. But technically speaking, you can use any grenade that you'd like. For aspects, we have On Your Mark, which isn't really important, but then we have Knock 'em Down, which I like because while Radiant, final blows with your equipped throwing knife will refund your melee immediately, which is very helpful. Now, as for fragments, I tried to cater this around having ability uptime and having your dodge or your melee back as soon as possible. So, while these are my go-tos, these are not really set in stone if you'd like to change any, but I'm going to go over what I use, which is, in the following order: Ember of Singeing, your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets, which you'll be doing a ton. Then Ember of Empyrean, plus Ember of Solace for Radiant and Restoration shenanigans, where you keep your timer up, and you just have Restoration for as long as you can in battle. Then we have Ember of Searing, defeating scorched targets grants melee energy, and then creates a Fire Sprite. So you get melee energy out of this, and then if you pick up Fire Sprite, you get grenade energy back for your Healing Nade. And then finally, on the 5th slot, we have Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and your allies Radiant. Radiant means you're doing more damage, and this season, when you have a Radiant melee, or just any solar melee, to throw at an enemy, you will weaken them as well, so you're getting a buff and a debuff. Speaking of which, let's go over the artifact now, so we know what the synergy is. This is all solar-based, unsurprisingly, so here we go. Flint Striker, Rapid Solar Weapon, Precision Hits, and Final Blows give you Radiant. You're going to be doing that non-stop with VEX. Kindling Trigger, Radiant causes solar weapons to apply scorch to unscorched targets. Again, firing VEX non-stop, and you're going to be scorching non-stop, which will be helping with your fragments. Torch, while Radiant, deal increased weapon damage to commands affected by Strand and Stasis debuffs. We will get to that through the weapons in a second. Heart of the Flame, this is really for team play specifically if you rock it with other solar people. So if you pop this around them and you want to put on Nighthawk, you will do massive damage. Revitalizing Blast, again through your solar melee, you cause damage with an ability, or your super I suppose, depending on what you're shooting, and then you debuff the enemy for a short duration. Solo Operative and Razor Precision. These are kind of a toss-up if you want to get rid of one of these because you're, you know, not solo, or you just don't want to use Raze and you want to use something else, like you're using a rocket and you want to put Argent Ordnance, that's fine too. But that's what I have in the final two columns, because Raze, while Radiant, Solar Precision Final Blows cause targets to ignite so that everything goes boom, and then obviously Solar Operative just gives you more damage when you're solo. Then on the bottom, we also have From Whence You Came, in case you're doing the new content, which is Taken and Scorn based. Now let's get to gear. The star of the show with Vex here is going to be Foe Tracer. Now, Foe Tracer allows you to use your abilities, which you're going to be doing anyway, and then when you damage a powerful combatant or a guardian with an ability, you temporarily gain a bonus to weapon damage matching your subclass type, which is solar, and Vex is solar, so you get an X4 Surge instead of an X3 Solar Surge to do even more damage. As for mods on your armor, they're not too restrictive. I'm going to go over what I use, but realistically, you don't need anything here. It's just kind of helpful to your build, depending on your situation. For example, in my helmet, I'm going to have Harmonic Siphon, because I'm going to be shooting, you know, Vex nonstop anyway, so I might as well make orbs with it. Then I have Dynamo to reduce my super cooldown when using my class ability, which I do nonstop anyway. If you'd like, you could replace this with a heavy ammo finder, depending on what heavy you're using for your build. Gloves, nothing too crazy. It's melee based, so I have heavy-handed in case I get melee kills with my knives, and I make an orb of power, and then Focusing Strike grants class ability energy when you cause damage with the powered melee, again, non-stop. Chest, we're just going to skip, not worth talking about. You either put reserve mods there or resist mods, depending on the content you're doing, or the reserves that you want in, like, a heavy. Next, boots. Obviously, we're going to have triple Solar Surge to maximize the damage of Vex Mythoclast, as well as likely your heavy matching solar as well. And then finally, in the class item, I have Time Dilation to extend the timer on my armor charges for more damage in the charges with our surges. And then finally, 2 copies of Outreach, reduce your melee cooldown when using your class ability in the event that you lost your knife and you dodge, and maybe you didn't dodge next to an enemy, so you didn't quite get your knife back, but you still get some energy through it even if you messed up. I will put an honorable mention here for Powerful Attraction. That's also good. When you dodge, you just scoop up all the orbs that you've made around you, and you get an armor charge instantly instead of trying to run around for orbs. Finally, let's talk about weapons. One thing I want to mention, though, before I talk about a weapon specifically, is that this build can stun all champions with the weapons I'm going to be talking about, in the top 2 slots anyway. For example, Vex Mythoclast, obviously we're using, can kill barrier champions because firing it non-stop at enemies will give you Radiant. When you're Radiant, you can just shoot barrier shields down and break them, and then kill the champion with Vex, no problem. Then, our second weapon, which we're going to talk about in the kinetic slot here, my recommendation is going to be Riptide. The reason I'm saying Riptide is a 3-for-1, basically. First of all, Riptide can trigger that stasis debuff that you have in your artifact that will give you additional damage from Torch, and also it can stun both Unstoppable and Overload champions, so 1 Riptide shot or 3 Riptide shots in case of an Unstop. You stun the champion, switch to Vex, 1 shot, bang, the champion's dead, so you're covering all 3 champions. Then your heavy slot, here you can virtually run whatever you would like, but obviously since you're running triple Solar Surge for Vex, you're going to want a solar weapon in this slot. There's a couple of good ones to use, such as Briar's Regret, Cataclysmic, Fixed Odds, Apex Predator, Heathen's Vengeance, or Roar of the Bear. Or is it Boar? I don't know. The IB Rocket, you know the one. Sneak from the future here. If you're enjoying the build or the video, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel, is much appreciated, and helps fight that YouTube algorithm. And if you want to go the extra step, you can also leave a like and or comment on the video. And if you don't know what to say for a comment, you can just say Vex Mythoclast. Alright, let's get back to the video. In conclusion, this is, in my opinion, a very fun and powerful build. However, I think it's going to stick somewhere in the mid-game, maybe the upper mid-game, teetering onto endgame content. For example, I think you can safely run this in Legend Lost Sectors, Master Lost Sectors, Nightfalls, even going up to GMs if you're with a coordinated team and they know that you're playing this build. But I think you would not take it into something like dungeons and raids, more specifically because those have little to no champions in them, at least on normal mode. There's very few. On Master, you're going to be -20. There could be a couple champions and encounters here and there, but they're far and few between, so you can't really make the build shine in there. You just are better off being on a different build entirely. So basically, it's a very powerful build, but it's situational, so make sure you use it in places where you can utilize it to its full capabilities. Because if you do it right, this thing hits like an absolute truck, as you've been seeing on screen in the footage already, doing like 300k to champs in Lost Sectors and even in GMs, like 2-shotting every champion. I think it with like 130, 40k, whatever it is, per shot. So it's still really fun. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of the build, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.